So I feel like now that No Way Home is done and out of the way, Marvel's just like, hey, get ready, it's gonna get chaotic because, well, we have the multiverse now. We can go anywhere. Because, for those of you that don't remember, Sony used to own all the rights to Spider-Man. That's why it took them a while, about, I think, 8 years, before they could get Spider-Man into the MCU, because even though Disney had bought Marvel at that point, they still didn't buy the rights to Sony. Now, I still think Sony has majority of the rights to Spider-Man, but Disney and Marvel are, well, Marvel's obviously, Disney is allowed to use the Spider-Man name because of this merger that they had, and now that you have Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and all the other Spider-Man villains who came through their portals into the MCU, making them canon, and knowing that it exists, we are now getting a lot more Sonyverse movies, and we even got a couple before Morbius here even came out. The 2 Venom movies seem to hint that they are in the Sony universe, in the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man universe, more than they were the MCU, considering the end credits scene at the end of Spider-Man No Way Home saw Venom in the MCU before getting teleported out, however leaving a little part of the symbiote in the MCU, which we assume that Tom Holland is going to don the black suit sometime whenever. I don't know when that's going to be. But there's also hints, too, that Tobey and Andrew are still going to have involvement with their Spider-Man stories, as Tobey Maguire is scheduled to make an appearance, a cameo appearance in Doctor Strange. Sony is also in talks with Sam Raimi to do Spider-Man 4 to kind of continue that saga as like a prequel to No Way Home, to see what happened after the events of Spider-Man 3. And even though Andrew Garfield has said he doesn't know what's next in store for him as Spider-Man, we all know that for a year or so, he denied being in No Way Home at all, and voila, there he was. And I feel like that Marvel now has this plan to join all the universes together, and you'll see why I think that in a minute, because Morbius is a Sony picture. It's not part of the MCU, so if you ever rank the MCU movies, you want to keep both Venom movies off, and you want to keep this one off, because yes, it's a Marvel movie, but it's not part of the MCU. It's canon, but it's not, it's like he's not in the same world as the Avengers. He's just in his own little universe. And in this one, we see Jared Leto this time playing Michael Morbius. He goes from DC to the MCU. And I was hesitant about this movie because I had seen the critic scores on Rotten Tomatoes and all that, and just hearing people talk about it, it was kind of like, do I really want to waste my money on this? What do I do here? And I went to the theater and saw it, and I gotta say, Rotten Tomatoes is a little harsh with that 17% rating. I will say that much. Like, was it a great movie? No, but was it like a terrible movie to where I'm never gonna watch it again? No, I think it's like maybe kind of in the middle, like kind of how Birds of Prey is for me, where I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. It's just kind of one of those mood movies where I can go back and watch it with no problem. It's just, it's definitely flawed in its own way, which some of the flaws, I guess, include just confusing plot at times. Like, you get the main plot, Michael Morbius, or Dr. Michael Morbius, he was born with this blood disease, this rare blood disease, and he meets this kid who had the same blood disease as him, and his name's Milo. He becomes an important part of the story, and Michael Morbius vows to one day find a cure for their blood disease so they won't, die at a younger age, they'll live longer, and just, be quote-unquote normal. And during this time, Morbius does find the cure for him and his buddy, except little did he know, getting the cure from vampire bats, because the whole blood thing turns you into an actual bloodthirsty sucking vampire. That was the main plot. There's other plots here and there. Like, one thing that they mentioned but they never go back on is the main love interest, which is, I think they call her Martin in this. She is a single mother with twins. It's mentioned, but you never see the twins. And it's like Morbius never really, I don't even know if he knows that she's a single mother. Like, it's just weird that the cops would mention it, and that's the only time in the movie that you would hear about it. Like, you think that they'd play some part in the movie or something, because usually they do when you hear that, like in a movie, like, oh, she's a single mother with twins, or a single mother with 3 kids, and they always end up coming in somewhere in the story. We end up seeing them, but you don't see that at all. It was a weird thing. Plus, it had the very predictable, oh, my best friend is the bad guy now, because Milo ends up finding out that Michael found the cure, but Michael doesn't want Milo taking this because he doesn't want him to turn out like he did, being this bloodthirsty vampire. And during this time, Michael Morbius gets tossed in jail because the cops find out it's him murdering these people, draining them of their blood, because the cops, basically said, well, he's got this rare blood disease, been looking at this for years. He went overseas in the international waters to conduct this experiment. 8 people ended up dead with their blood just completely sucked out of their bodies. So Michael is up to something, and obviously during this time his friend Milo visits him in jail, and you're thinking, oh, okay, he's just the same old Milo. We come to find out that during the time Michael Morbius was in jail, that he went into Morbius's little laboratory, stole the cure to his disease, the one that turns you into a, bloodthirsty vampire, and he took it, and now he basically has the same powers and maybe even a little bit stronger than Michael Morbius in a way. And I think, again, that was my main problem, was the predictable plot, or the predictable twist, and just some plot holes into some things in this movie. I do like the action scenes. I think the slow-mo adds a little something to it. It can be overused at times, but it's definitely used well. And might I add here, Jared Leto, he's like the big catch of this movie. I think he did fine. I really, really do. Obviously, me and many people not being a big fan of his portrayal of the Joker, it just kind of led us into like, oh my god, he's doing another comic book movie, how bad is it going to be this time? And I think that really played into a lot of the critics' scores as well. They saw the way he was on Suicide Squad with the Joker, and they're like, oh, he's basically just going to be, his Marvel vampire version of that, and he really wasn't. He spoke a lot more in a deep voice. It seemed more passionate about it, more genuine than his actual Joker performance in general. There was just, again, something about it. I felt like that fit him better. Like that darker vampire feeling was definitely, suitable for him, as opposed to playing the Joker, one of the most iconic characters in all of comics. Him kind of toning down and going to this character that's not necessarily well known unless you're like big into the fandom, I think was the right fit for him, because even if you change something about him a little bit, most people aren't going to notice and aren't going to care that much and aren't going to freak out about it as much. So he did fine. I think a lot of the acting was cool too. I think just the fact that it's a short movie. It's under 2 hours long, which if you know Marvel, even in the Sonyverse, that's kind of unusual. There's not a whole lot of them that are. I think all the Thor movies are under 2 hours long. Both Venom movies are, one's barely an hour and a half. So, sometimes they cram a lot of things into these movies, and this is definitely one of them where, at the beginning, you're kind of confused as to what's going on. Why is he going to this cave with bats and all this kind of stuff? And then it flashes you back 25 years, giving you more of an understanding of him and his friend in that hospital, trying to, or bonding over their rare blood disease and all that kind of stuff, and then Michael making that promise after saving Milo's life, saying, when I find the cure, I'm going to come back and I'm going to find you. Because you would think that that's why Milo would have gotten upset and would have became the bad guys, because like, oh, you said when you found the cure you'd come find me, and yet here you are hiding the cure from me. But no, it's like he just like took the cure and then just really became like it's like how the Venom symbiote, like when it attaches to you, you just feel different. That's basically what this did to Milo, because in the end, Morbius stabs him in the chest at the end. Of course, vampire has to get stabbed in the chest. He says, hey, don't kill me, please, Michael, we're buddies, remember? And by that time, it's too late. It's kind of like at the end of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, where Green Goblin tries to be like, Peter, please, it's me, Norman, and then it turns out, it's still not Norman, it's just the Green Goblin, playing it up. That's basically what happened here at the end. He didn't want Michael to kill him, even though basically the guy was already dying in the first place.
Oh. Yo! Yo, holy shit, he dead!
At first, Michael was going to sacrifice himself, but I don't think he ever did. He made 2 vials because he said, basically, what is going to happen is it's going to, wipe away all the, vampire blood-sucking stuff, but it is very, very, very fatal to humans. And he knew that he didn't have a long time to live, because living off of artificial human blood, each day, the time limit that he had a watch, and he would keep time every time he would drink blood as to how long it would last before he needed any. And I think it started out at like 10 hours and then like went down to 6 and then 4. So he knew, I'm just dying slowly anyway because each day I'm going to need more and more blood, that at some point in time I'm just going to be full-fledged vampire. And he didn't want that. He is seen in this movie as a nice guy who saved a lot of lives, very smart, graduated medical school, got his degree when he was 19, and because of his cures and research for other things, has saved the lives of others. So he's seen as the good guy here, and yeah, now he's kind of more of an anti-hero because he has to do bad things to stay alive. I mean, obviously, drinking blood of people, that's going to kill them, but at the same point in time, when he's not, the vampire, Morbius, he's just Michael, and he wants to help as many people as he can, and he feels guilty for what he does, but the thing is, he doesn't remember doing it because at that point in time, his body's not in control. It's like the whole Moon Knight thing. If you saw episode 1 of Moon Knight, when he's Moon Knight, something happens, and then he wakes up and he's just his regular self, Steven, he's like, what the hell happened? I don't know how I got here, where I am, why is there blood on my hands? Like, that's basically what we got from Morbius in general. Like, again, I think another thing, too, I'll say, up until you get to the action scenes, majority of it is boring one way or another. I feel like the interaction between the characters didn't necessarily feel all that great for the most part. I mean, there were some parts that were cool, but there was some times in the theater where I'd be sitting there like this, and they're like, huh? Oh, right, yeah, the movie, that's still going on. So I guess it does have parts where you definitely start to zone out and you lose interest. So the inconsistency is definitely there. But now I want to talk about the interesting part, probably the one that's going to get talked about the most with this movie when you see it, because I think you can find it online now. Big spoiler coming. There was already spoilers throughout this video, but big spoiler coming here. So you know how in the trailer Morbius, they kind of teased that Vulture would be a big part of the movie? He's not even in the regular movie. He's in the 2 end credit scenes. Well, it's a mid-credit and then an actual, like, post-credit scene that we get. And it's very confusing. Like, even I'm still trying to figure it out, because the first scene that we see after the movie, the mid-credit scene, he's in jail in his universe, because if you remember, at the end of Spider-Man Homecoming, he was taken in, and when we saw the end credit scene there, it seemed like he was going to, plot this breakout plan and be like, I'm going to get you, Spider-Man, and nothing ever came of that. Well, it goes to toward the end of Spider-Man No Way Home, when Doctor Strange is trying to stop the, other universes from coming in, the big purple lights in the sky, and people started cracking through, and you see Vulture kind of wisp away, and all of a sudden he's in another jail cell, and because they don't know who this guy is and how he ended up in this empty jail cell, he gets set free, so he's no longer in prison for what I presume to be his life. And then the second end credit scene comes where Morbius is out there, he's checking the time, like, oh, how much longer do I have before I gotta, go kill somebody else, drink their blood. And then you just see Vulture come flying down in his costume. However, someone pointed this out, it's different from the one that he had in No Way Home. If you remember at the end of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, when they're walking through Oscorp, you can see the Vulture wings just kind of sitting back behind the glass. Those are the ones that he had on, and he ends up asking Morbius to team up with him to, defeat Spider-Man. And this is where the interesting thing starts, because, okay, we know that. It seems like Marvel's trying to do this whole Sinister Six thing. The only question is, which Spider-Man is this?
Hey, who mess is this?
Vulture's already fought MCU Spider-Man, Tom Holland. Tobey, I really don't think this is Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man universe. It seems like they have more plans for him, but I don't think that this is it. All signs are pointing to this being the Andrew Garfield Sony Spider-Man universe. So are they talking about that Spider-Man or the Tom Holland Spider-Man? Because if so, Morbius doesn't know who the MCU Spider-Man is, and Vulture, unless he's done his research, doesn't know who that universe's Spider-Man is. So it becomes very confusing in a way. I guess when you see Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, it'll probably help it a little bit. It seems like they're just going to be combining the universes all together to make them all canon with each other, which is why I'm thinking that, Tobey and Andrew aren't done as Spider-Man. They're going to be back and their stories are going to be continued in some way or another, because now you have the Venom serum in the MCU, or symbiote in the MCU. You have Morbius and Vulture teaming up to get Spider-Man. At this point, it seems like they're setting up for for Spider-Man to team up with Venom or something of the sort to help defeat the Sinister Six, because MCU, they don't have Venom as a villain, they have him as an anti-hero, so, when he's Eddie Brock, he doesn't necessarily want to do bad, but of course, the Venom symbiote, it's got to eat all this kind of stuff, so it, ends up killing people, this, that, and the other, basically the same way that Morbius has to go about, his thing now, and I don't know, it's still very confusing to me, but that's the best I can really put it, is they have to be setting up for something. Like, I knew after Endgame, these end credit scenes would just get so ridiculous, because I remember before Endgame, or even, and a little after Infinity War, all the end credit scenes were somebody wisping away from the Thanos snap, and you knew what it was setting up. Now, you see an end credit scene for Marvel, and you're just like, I have no idea. And even now, after No Way Home, with everything in shambles now, you're just sitting there going, I don't know, I can't predict it this time like I could the last time. Like, we don't know, and I don't think Marvel wants us to know. I think Marvel and Sony are planning something big to happen, and kind of, end their 10-year... Because if you look, when Endgame happened, it was about 10 years during Phase 1 and I think Phase 3, the main phase of Marvel, the beginning of it. And now it's Phase 4 going into Phase 5, and it seems like Phase 4 is going to set up a lot of what Phase 5 and Phase 6 will be to end that phase, and then who knows, maybe they'll start it all over, maybe they'll continue doing more phases with other characters from other dimensions. I don't know, but Marvel must have something up their sleeve for that reason, because why would they put this in Morbius if it's not canon to anything? Like, it wouldn't seem right for them to do that. Like, it would just be the most random end credit scenes if they were just like, okay, yeah, this happened, we're not going to go back to this at all again. It seems like they're planning something, but also the fact that the trailer lied and making Michael Keaton out like he was going to be a big main part of the movie made it more confusing for people. You could have just showed his Vulture in one clip and not made it like he was anything big for the movie. Instead, you were like, oh yeah, look, here's Vulture, he's going to be in it, only to have him in the end credit scenes at the end. Like, it was just very, very weird that now is the time you decide to bring him back when, you've had him in the vault for 5 years at this point. Spider-Man Homecoming came out in 2017. He's been in jail since then. You've had him in the vault all this time, and now is the time when you decide to have him show back up in Morbius, of all movies. But, again, I don't see this movie as bad as the critic rating. If I had to do, like, a Rotten Tomatoes rating, I'd probably give it, like, a 52-ish, maybe. Like, it's somewhere up there. Low to mid 50s, maybe high 40s if you're pushing it, but I think the 17% that Rotten Tomatoes gave, the critics gave it, was, I think there was just a lot of nitpicky stuff. The plot is easier to follow than you think, but again, for the most part, there are parts of the movie where they lose you, or you're just kind of, trying to stop yourself from falling asleep a little bit. That's really my main complaint with it, is, like I said, the inconsistency of just being able to keep me occupied with it and being able to pay attention. It just doesn't do that much. I like to think of it as like the first two Venom movies, they're okay to that point, and this is where Morbius is. It's kind of like with those, where they're not great, but they're not bad. They're just kind of okay enough to the point where I can go back and watch this when I want to, but it's not going to be ones that I like go back and watch all the time, like the old Avengers movies or the old Spider-Man movies or something like that. There's been way better stuff that Marvel has done, and there's been way better Marvel movies that Sony has done, and it seems like, again, they have this big plan that they're going to do, and they're going to keep it a big secret until it actually happens. So yeah, that's my thoughts on this with Morbius and just everything in general. With seems like Marvel and Sony universes colliding together, and even the Fox verse too. Because like I said, if you count X-Men and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, even though Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man also is owned by Sony, a lot of it had to do with Fox. So those three universes seem to be coming together and just forming one gigantic universe to make them all canon with each other. And to me, that's pretty cool, but probably going to get confusing as hell. But other than that, you can tell me in the comments below, what did you think of the movie if you have seen it, and what are your takes on the end credit scene? What do you think is trying to be set up here with this end credit scene, or the end credit scenes, I should say, because there's two of them. It just, again, very, very confusing, and it still has me thinking, like, what the hell is even going on anymore? So yeah, for those of you that didn't like my poster, it's gone now. I replaced it with that from the Better Movie. I'm probably going to put something else up here, but I'm still not sure yet. But, the Suicide Squad poster will be back for the next two releases because I filmed them before this. So I didn't want you thinking like, wait a minute, now I'm confused just like this Morbius movie confused me. You had nothing up and now that it's back on your door, like what did you do? Like, no, it's okay. It's fine. But yeah, that's it for me. Stay safe out there, wear your mask, get vaccinated, and I will catch you all in the next one.